it's Jackie Williams. Thanks for joining me. In this video, I want to look at the Take to the Sky suite. This includes the Adventurous Sky bundle. So we see that we have some nice aviation images. My favorite personally being this really great texture stamp with the paneling. And then of course we have the dies that fit around the images, as well as some standalone detailed airplane dies, a label, and a few other bits and pieces. I quite like the clouds. And then we also have the industrial trinkets embellishments, and these have two sides, and one side more of a smooth rivet and the other side with that texture on it. And then of course the papers, and one side is fairly patterned with airplane, map, and cloud images. And then the other side is a little more neutral, still some maps, but then we've got some checks and this cool paneling print and another map. My favorite piece out of this pack, though, is this one here. And I took a poll and we decided it was called a cut sheet. So this is one that you could use as is, as kind of a quilty look, or cut these pieces apart and then you have that many more pieces of printed paper and patterns to work with. Also some ready-made elements for your memory keeping and card making. All right, let's get started with our project. We're going to start actually this time with a card base of smoky slate, and I'm going to fold that in half. My card base is 5.5 inches by 8.25 inches. That's a workable size for the paper here in New Zealand. Then I'm going to use 2 strips of the Designer Series paper. This is the one with the clouds, but on the other side is this nice smoky slate check. I'm going to put that on to the smoky slate card base, and just to give it a little bit of a difference between the smoky slate paper and the smoky slate cardstock, I'm going to sand the edges to give it a little bit of a white edge. If you don't like that look or want a card that's a little bit quicker, you can just skip that step. Now I've cut these just a smidge more narrow than my card base, so they're about 5 3/8 inches instead of 5.5. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Now I want to create my background. So I have a piece of white here that is 5.5 by 2 3/4 inches. I grab my grid paper. Now the first thing I want to do is stamp my words. So I have Knight of Navy here, and I'm going to stamp "You're the best," plain and simple, right down here at the bottom. Now this set includes some cloud dies, and one fun way to use your dies that's a little bit different is actually to create a mask, and then we're going to use this negative piece of the die cutting and we're going to use that as a masking template. So I've cut this a little bit larger than my piece just to give us a little wiggle room. Now I'm making sure that I can't see my words. They're just there though, so I might scoot it up a little. So, because we don't want to put our embossing paste or ink over our written words. Okay, so they're under here. Now I'm going to use embossing paste for my clouds. And just going back to the template, I'm using paper because I'm just going to use it once or twice. If you wanted to create a template that you could use over and over and maybe tuck away with your dies to keep, then use vellum or a window sheet. Probably a window sheet would be the best thing. Now, of course, we want to keep our embossing paste very tightly stored. I'm going to put a little bit there, and then close that back up tightly, and even put it in a sealed bag if you have one. And then I'm just going to use, I think, 2 little drops of the balmy blue, and let's mix that up. We can always add more ink. That's pretty good. I don't want it very dark. Okay, so we're going to pick up that and go ahead and put that through our template. And it's all right if they're a little bit uneven or if the color is variegated. They are meant to be fluffy clouds after all. You could even add a little texture on top of the clouds if you wanted to. I'm going to leave mine smooth. And then when we pull this up, Should have some nice clouds under there. Okay, now we're going to set this aside to dry. I quite like how there's some lighter and darker areas in the clouds. Now let's get our airplane ready. So I have Night of Navy ink, and I have the large airplane, and I have a blending brush. So what we're going to do is stamp the airplane down, close this, and then one thing that you can do with the blending brush and your classic inks is just use the outline or the stamped image to actually pull color. So I'm just going around like this. I'm just going to get a little bit of that color off. And where there are these detail marks, I'm just using the blending brush to just pull that color through and just sort of bleed it out a little bit. So I could actually color in my whole image just using the outline ink that's already there. Now I do want to add just a little bit of smoky slate. So I'm going to squeeze my ink pad and just pick up a little bit of color here from the lid. I'm just going to lightly tap it on, because if I rub it on, it's going to pick up the navy. Right, then we'll take our die and go ahead and cut this out. All right, now I have a small airplane as well. I've also added just a little bit of the copper clay to this particular airplane. Let's see how we're doing with our embossing paste. Now before we put our airplanes on, I'm going to put a little bit of foil in behind. I'm using tape because glue on foil tends to make a bit of a mess. Okay, and then one more layer. I've got a piece of copper clay, and I'm just going to tear that. If you're not a fan of tearing, you could just cut it or use some kind of a border die. Okay, then let's go ahead and put this onto our card base. Quite like this color combination of balmy blue with copper clay. Now, the printed paper strips are just slightly more narrow than these strips, and that was intentional. You could change that if you wanted them all the same. Now we'll go ahead and put our airplanes on. Now, if you don't want to do or don't have embossing paste, I wanted to say you could just ink through the masks that you've made with the cloud dies if you would like to do that. Or you could just put on die cuts. But I do like the texture and the variation of color that embossing paste provides. Now we'll put on our industrial trinkets. Let's put 3 on. And I like to put them on the glue dots like this. This is the easiest way to adhere these. My builder husband would have a fit that these rivets are on in a random way, but they are just for embellishments, and this is art, so I'm going to leave it. So there you go. And then on the inside, you can just do some simple stamping of the airplane if you would like. Now I have some other samples to share with you. So this is another one that I've made using actually scraps of the designer series paper and just creating my own background using small pieces, effectively creating a larger piece, and then just kept the front fairly simple with the busy background using now the plain die cuts and that foil paper for the embellishments. And then this one is similar in that I've used the die cuts for the plain this time, and this one is a sliding card, so it opens up like this with the plain taking off. And this card was made by my team member, Glennis Logue, and shared at one of our recent team events. It's just a simple little fun fold, but quite a nice idea and a good one for using the airplane. And then I have done a memory keeping page of my husband, Rob, and used the designer series paper and that really great stamp that I mentioned earlier in the background. And then here is the facing page, so kind of the reverse of the first page. So that's a great way to use the airplanes as well in your memory keeping. So there are my samples to share with you. I hope this is inspiring. If you would like even more ideas with the Take to the Sky bundle, the All-Star Design team, of which I am part, have designed 12 projects. And there's a link in the video description if you would like to download those 12 projects. And they come with videos and cutting measurements and everything. So you can just dig in and start creating. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a comment and share with your friends. And I'll see you next time. This is Jackie Williams. Bye.